The morning she didn't come back. Hey guys, tonight, I want to tell you something that's been sitting in my chest for years. It's 6:04 a.m., and the house smells like coffee. That soft, familiar scent of morning warm, toasty, with that faint, earthy bitterness that clings to the air like a memory. The coffee pot clicks off, done brewing. I stand there in the kitchen, scratching at my neck, still in my sleep shirt, and pour 2 mugs, like I always do. One for me, one for her, except she's not here. Hasn't been for a long time. So I sit with both cups, mine in hand, hers across from me. It's a habit that makes me feel not okay, exactly, but less jagged, like I'm still keeping rhythm with a beat that once kept us both alive. My name's David. I'm 57. Used to be an architect. Now I mostly work from home, doing freelance consulting jobs, code reviews, blueprint tweaks. The kind of stuff that doesn't require a tie or a conversation. That suits me fine. Conversations have been hard since she left. Her name's Elise. She's my wife. Or was. We never officially divorced. There's still a toothbrush in the upstairs bathroom. And one of her scarves is hanging behind the coat rack like it's just waiting for October. What went wrong? That's the part I still turn over every morning, like a smooth stone in my pocket. There wasn't a fight, not really. No screaming, no affair, no drama. Just space. Like we forgot to keep finding each other in the small moments. And then one day, she just didn't come back. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing that. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let me take you into the heart of it all. It started slow, like a faucet with a lazy drip. At first, I didn't even notice. I was busy. We both were. She'd come in from teaching her Pilates class, throw her keys in the bowl, and we'd exchange that one-word check-in. Dinner later? Okay. There's a comfort in routine, until it becomes camouflage. We still had dinner together, still took walks around the block, still folded laundry side by side on Sunday nights. But I couldn't tell you what we talked about. It was like driving a familiar road in the dark. You know the turns, but the scenery blurs. And I didn't ask. That's on me. I used to be better at asking questions. I used to sit on the couch with her feet in my lap and listen to stories about her clients. The way she'd roll her eyes and smile when she said someone refused to find their core. She had the best crooked smile, slightly higher on the left, like a secret joke only she understood. One morning, I woke up and her side of the bed was cold. That wasn't strange. She had early clients, but her phone was gone. Her travel mug was missing. 2, and I felt this odd sensation, not panic, not sadness, just this pause, like when you lose signal in a tunnel. She didn't text me all day. I convinced myself that was normal. That night, I made grilled cheese and tomato soup her comfort food and left hers on a plate, covered in foil. It sat there until 11:30. I put it in the fridge, and the next day, still no message, still no Elise. On the 3rd morning, I found her key on the entryway table, under the dog leash. No note, no big explanation, just a key. And you know what's ridiculous? The part that hit me hardest in that moment wasn't the silence. It was that she didn't hang the key on the hook like she always did. She just left it lying there, like something she didn't need anymore. I remember standing there, barefoot on the hardwood, staring at that stupid key. I thought, maybe this is temporary. Maybe she's just mad. Maybe she'll walk in tomorrow, tired and puffy-eyed, and say something like, I just needed air. I waited 3 weeks before I told anyone. Even then, I said she was visiting her sister because I couldn't quite say the truth out loud. Hell, I didn't even know what the truth was. In those 3 weeks, I made her coffee every morning, sat across from her empty chair, poured it into her favorite mug, the one with the floral handle that's chipped near the lip. And I swear, sometimes, when the house was quiet enough, I could almost hear her footsteps on the stairs. Of course, that's just my brain playing tricks. Filling in the gaps, I called her once, but it went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What would I have said? Hey, just wondering if you're ever coming back. Also, we're out of creamer. It's strange. The things you notice when someone leaves, the small, dumb details, like how she always folded the dish towels in thirds, not halves, or how she rewound the tape measure before putting it back in the drawer. I haven't touched that drawer since. And the worst part is, I don't think she hates me. I don't think she left out of anger. I think she just left. And that hurts in a way I can't quite explain, like trying to mourn someone who isn't dead. You don't get closure. You don't get the funeral. You just get the coffee every morning, still brewing for 2. How we fell into easy silence. I think the first time I noticed the quiet wasn't after she left. It was years before. Standing in the kitchen while she chopped onions, and I leaned against the counter, scrolling through my phone. We weren't fighting. We weren't even unhappy. We just weren't talking. Not in that real way. She was humming something jazzy, probably a playlist she liked for cooking, and I remember thinking I should say something. Anything. Ask about her class that morning. Compliment the smell of whatever she was making. Maybe bring up that book she left face down on the armrest. But I didn't. I just said, "Want me to stir that?" And she smiled, handed me the wooden spoon, and went back to slicing. That was us. Soft, polite, muted. You ever see a couple at a restaurant who barely speak through the whole meal? That was us, but in our own kitchen. We just got good at the choreography, passing salt, refilling glasses, clearing plates. The movement stayed, the meaning, not so much. There's this lie people tell about love, that if it's real, it should always feel electric. But I think love's more like a ceiling fan in August. It's supposed to hum quietly in the background, barely noticed, until the power goes out, and suddenly everything's stifling. I remember one night, maybe a year before she left, when the power really did go out. Summer storm. Whole block went dark. We lit candles, made a popcorn on the gas stove, and sat on the floor playing cards. She beat me in gin rummy 3 times in a row, called me a grumpy loser, and laughed that perfect laugh of hers, the one that made her shoulders bounce. And I thought, there she is. Like I'd forgotten what she sounded like. I should have held on to that night harder instead. The next morning, the lights came back on, and so did the quiet. I don't know exactly when we stopped trying. There's no anniversary for that. It happened slow, like waking up a minute later every day until you're 2 hours behind and wondering how it happened. At some point, she stopped asking me to walk the dog with her. At some point, I stopped waiting up if she was late from the studio. At some point, she started sleeping with her back to me, and I let her. That's the part I can't shake. Not the leaving, the letting. I let her drift, and I told myself it was respect, space, autonomy. All those modern marriage buzzwords, but deep down, I think I was just afraid. Afraid to ask if she was okay and hear that she wasn't. Afraid to hear her say, "I don't think I love you the way I used to." So I clung to silence, treated it like safety. Sometimes she'd come home and sit on the edge of the bed, still in her teaching clothes, hair tied up in that loose bun, and she'd sigh like her whole body weighed twice as much. And I'd say something dumb, like "long day" instead of "talk to me," and she'd just nod. Sometimes she wouldn't even look up, and I'd nod back, like that counted. We had this thing, we always kissed goodnight. Even when we were tired or annoyed or barely speaking, we'd still press lips, quick and mechanical, like clocking in a marital time card. I think that's what made it feel safe. Like as long as that kiss happened, we were okay. But those kisses stopped meaning anything at some point. She started kissing my cheek, and then she'd kiss her fingertips and tap them to my shoulder, and eventually, nothing. That first night, she didn't kiss me goodnight. I waited, lay there stiff as a board, pretending to sleep, and waited for her to lean in. She didn't. And I didn't ask why. There was one dinner. God, this is stupid, but we sat eating roast chicken and rice, and I asked if she'd remembered to pick up toothpaste. She looked at me, this flat look, and said, "We haven't laughed together in months." And I just blinked. I thought she was joking at first, like a dry punchline. I said, "What do you mean?" She shook her head, took a bite, and said, "Never mind." That was the whole conversation. I think about that a lot. How she threw me a line, and I didn't catch it, didn't even see it was there. You know what's wild? We never yelled, not once. No big blow-ups, no dramatic storms, just low tide, every day. A little more water pulling back, a little more sand exposed. I used to tell friends we were just low maintenance. That's what I called it now. I think what we were was quiet, not peaceful, not content, just quiet. And that silence became the furniture. It was always there. And eventually, I stopped seeing it. But she didn't. She kept noticing, kept feeling it like a draft through the window that never closed right. And I think, in the end, that's what made her leave. Not a fight, not a betrayal, just the ache of always feeling alone, even in the same room. And maybe the worst part, I get it. The grocery list, she taped to the fridge. There's still a piece of yellow-lined paper on the fridge. It's curling at the edges now, one corner slipping loose from the magnet shaped like a ceramic carrot. Her handwriting's faded but neat. Those tall, confident letters, almond milk, tangerines, brown rice, not white, underlined twice. I see it every day, and I still haven't taken it down. I remember the day she wrote it. She had a pencil behind her ear, hair pulled back with one of those wide cloth headbands she wore when she cleaned. She'd been organizing the pantry, muttering about expired couscous, and I was sitting at the counter eating a banana like I was on a break from a job I didn't have. "You want anything from the store?" she asked. Glancing over, I said, "We're out of that cereal I like." She gave me a look. "The one with the fake granola clusters, or the one with the fake fruit?" "The fake fruit," I said. She smiled, one of those half laughs through her nose. "Figures." Then she picked up the pencil and jotted the list. That's the thing I didn't realize until later, that she added my cereal to the list first, even though she hated it. Said it tasted like dusty fruit roll-ups. It felt normal, then thoughtful, even that little act of remembering. It only struck me months later, standing in the kitchen after she was gone, just staring at that list. How odd it was that this tiny piece of paper had more warmth in it than most of our recent conversations. It was like a fossil proof that, at one point, she still cared what I had for breakfast. I remember running my finger along the word tangerines. She always ate them by peeling them in one spiral, trying to keep the rind whole. Said it was a dumb game she played with herself since childhood. I never once asked why that mattered to her. You'd be amazed what you forget to ask until there's no one left to answer. I kept thinking, should I take it down? But then what? A bare fridge door? A silence too loud? So I left it. Still leave it, sometimes, late at night. I go to the kitchen and reread it like it might change. Like she'll have added something new, maybe come home, scrawled at the bottom. But it's always the same. Almond milk, tangerines, rice, fake cereal. That stupid carrot magnet used to drive me nuts. We got it as a joke from one of those farm stands with overpriced honey and soap. Shaped like animals. She thought it was adorable. I thought it looked like something you'd find in a preschooler's craft bin. Now I'd protect that thing like an heirloom. Funny how sentimentality works. One minute, it's a cluttered fridge. The next, it's a shrine. I cleaned the fridge once after she left. Just once. Threw out all the old salad dressings. Decaf coffee she swore she'd learn to enjoy. That bottle of hot sauce we got on our anniversary trip to Santa Fe. I stood there with the door open, holding the half-used bottle in one hand, and the expiration date made me laugh best by June 14th, 2022. That was 3 days before she left. I laughed so hard I nearly cried, because of course it was. Of course even the condiments had better timing than me. I put the hot sauce back. That trip to Santa Fe was supposed to be our reset. A fresh breeze through dusty habits. We stayed at a little adobe inn with squeaky floorboards and terrible coffee. Took a pottery class where I made something vaguely bowl-shaped and she made a vase that looked like it belonged in an art gallery. She was good at that, making things beautiful. On the last night, we sat by the fire pit, and I remember she leaned her head on my shoulder, and I felt something. Real warmth, maybe even love. But I didn't say anything, didn't reach for her hand, and she didn't ask me to. We just sat there, listening to the wood crackle, letting the silence fill the space where words should have been. I don't think I realized how many little moments we lost like that. How many gestures were offered and not received, like her writing the grocery list, including the cereal, like her curling up next to me on that bench. I was there, but I wasn't present. There's this line I keep circling in my head. You weren't cruel, you were absent. And honestly, I don't know which is worse. Sometimes I wonder if she meant for me to find the list, if leaving it up on the fridge was her way of saying, I remembered you, even when you didn't remember me. Or maybe she just forgot it was there. Maybe I'm giving it too much meaning. That's the problem with memory. It doesn't ask your permission before turning random scraps into symbols. But here's what I know for sure. Every time I buy tangerines now, I try to peel them in one spiral. I never get it quite right, but I keep trying. The day I missed her birthday. You ever miss a moment so completely that it rewires your memory of everything before it? That was me the year I forgot Elisa's birthday. It wasn't even a big one, 43. I think, but it was the kind of mistake you don't come back from. Not because of the number, because of what it said without saying it. Now. In my defense, and this is the kind of defense that only makes it worse, I didn't forget her. I just forgot the day. I was swamped with a late project. My phone was on silent. And sometime around 3 p.m., I looked up from my laptop, saw the date in the corner of the screen, and my stomach dropped like I'd just driven over a cliff. I called her right away, straight to voicemail. That part haunts me the most. Not the missed dinner reservations, not the gift that never got wrapped, but the sound of her voice in that voicemail I finally heard later that night. Hey, I know you're probably busy, but I guess I just hoped you'd call today. Anyway, I'm gonna go out with Marlene and get a drink. Don't worry about it. We'll talk later. That little pause, after I guess I just hoped, it hit harder than anything she could have screamed. When I finally got home, arms full of panic roses from the gas station, she wasn't there. Just the answering machine blinking at me like it was trying to be polite. I stood in the living room, looking at the empty hallway, and realized I didn't even know what she'd worn that morning. Couldn't picture what earrings she had on. Couldn't remember if I said goodbye when I left. That's the kind of thing that starts to rot you from the inside. When she got back, late, she didn't yell. She didn't throw the flowers away. She just put them in water, clipped the stems, and said, thanks. Like I was a neighbor who brought over mail that wasn't mine. We went to bed that night without brushing teeth, without turning off the lamp, without touching. The next morning, she made oatmeal, stirred in raisins like always, and placed a bowl in front of me. No eye contact. Just a quiet breakfast. But that silence, it wasn't neutral anymore. It was thick and sharp, like walking barefoot over thumbtacks. And I realized something as I chewed that bland, lumpy oatmeal I never liked in the first place. She'd always remembered my birthday. Every single year. Even that time, I was sick with the flu and too dizzy to sit up. She lit a candle in a cupcake and held it while I blew sideways into her face. We laughed so hard she dropped the plate. She never forgot. And here I was still married, still living under the same roof, and I couldn't even keep track of her birth date. That was the first time I saw her cry without sound. That night, after I thought she'd gone to sleep, I came back into the room to grab my phone charger and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, hands in her lap, eyes red but dry, like she'd run out of tears. I didn't say anything. That still burns. The not saying. Standing there like a scared intern instead of a husband. I backed out of the room, slowly, like I wasn't supposed to be part of that moment. You want to know what real regret feels like? It's not guilt. It's not shame. It's distance. It's watching someone hurt and realizing they don't look to you for comfort anymore. After that, something in her eyes went quiet. Not angry, not cold, just done. We still talked, still shared the bills, still said goodnight like people do when they don't know what else to say. But something had shifted. A few weeks later, I found a birthday card in the trash, unopened, pink envelope, from her sister. I think. I pulled it out, wiped off a coffee stain, and stood there, holding it like it might tell me how to fix things. It didn't. I threw it out again. I used to joke that we were low maintenance. Remember, I told friends Elise was the kind of woman who didn't need big gestures, didn't want roses or chocolates or breakfast in bed. But maybe she did. Maybe she just stopped asking. Maybe she just wanted to feel remembered, like her day mattered to someone. I still have the gas station receipt from those roses. It's in my wallet, tucked behind an old grocery loyalty card I never use. I keep it because I don't know. Maybe as proof that I tried, or maybe as punishment, so I never forget again. But here's the irony. Now, I remember every birthday, my neighbors, my nieces, the mailman's. For all I know, my calendar looks like a party planner's spreadsheet. But the one birthday that mattered most, I missed it. And you don't get do-overs for that kind of miss. Our last weekend at the cabin. It was October when we went. Leaves were that warm, kind of dying flush gold and burnt orange, and the air had just enough bite to make you want a second layer, but not enough to bring out the real coats. Elise always loved that cabin. Said it smelled like pine and old books and secrets. We'd rented it every year for nearly a decade. Always the same one, just off the lake. Tucked between two bowed pines that leaned like they were whispering. There was a porch with two creaky rocking chairs and a fire pit that only worked when you bribed it with too much lighter fluid. We packed the car the same way we always did. I brought the cooler. She handled the snack bag. She forgot the marshmallows that year, first time ever. And I remember she just laughed. Said, maybe it's a sign. I didn't ask what it meant. It felt normal at first, comfortably familiar. She wore her red flannel, the one I always said made her look like a lumberjack in a romance novel, and we played Scrabble while drinking lukewarm cider. I took a picture of her that Saturday afternoon. She was standing near the porch, half smiling into the wind, hair in a messy bun, thumb hooked in her jeans. It's still my phone wallpaper. We smiled for that picture, both of us. And that smile, it doesn't look fake. But I think now it wasn't happiness. It was nostalgia. We were clinging to the shell of something we'd already abandoned, like two actors giving one final curtain call, hoping the crowd wouldn't notice the set behind them was already being dismantled. That first night, we made dinner together. I chopped vegetables. She stirred the pasta. We moved in quiet rhythm. The TV didn't work, bad reception, and instead of complaining, we played cards. Gin rummy again. This time I won. She accused me of cheating, I said, You just suck at shuffling." We laughed, really laughed. But that night, when we got into bed, I turned to her and she was already asleep, or pretending. Back to me, arms crossed, like a question left unanswered. I lay awake for what felt like hours, staring at the beams in the ceiling, listening to the wind tug at the windows. And I thought, say something. Just say something. Ask her what she's thinking. Ask her if she's still in this. Ask her if she's happy. But the words stuck, somewhere between my chest and throat. And instead, I counted the knots in the wood grain until sleep took me down like a heavy tide. The next morning, I woke up early and made pancakes, burned the first batch. Like always, she came down with wet hair and a towel around her shoulders and said, "You never learn, do you?" And I said, "Nope, not where it counts." It was a joke, I think. But she paused at the coffee maker, hands still, just for a second, then poured herself a cup and didn't respond. We went for a walk later that day, around the lake, through the crunchy leaves. She didn't take my hand. We used to always walk, holding hands, interlocked fingers, palm to palm, like puzzle pieces. But this time, nothing. I kept my hands in my pockets. She kept hers swinging. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is the last time we'll ever do this and still pretend we're okay. I wanted to say something, but again, I didn't. We took a photo on the dock before we left. I set the phone on the railing and put it on a timer. We sat next to each other, smiling. I draped an arm behind her. Her shoulders leaned in, but her hands were folded neatly in her lap. When I looked at that picture later, it struck me we looked like siblings, like polite cousins at a reunion, not husband and wife. The drive home was quiet. I drove. She napped. And I think something broke open during that drive, though I couldn't name it at the time. She didn't unpack when we got home, just took her bag upstairs and left it by the closet. Normally, she'd be the first to do laundry, get everything reset for Monday. But that time, nothing. 3 nights later, I found a stack of mail on the counter and a scribbled note on top. "Don't forget the water bill." I set up the auto pay, but it might still need your card. It was such a practical thing. Helpful, even. But reading it made me feel hollow, like she was tidying up a life she'd already decided to leave. We didn't talk about the trip again. No, wasn't that nice. No same time next year. Just that photo on my phone and a growing weight behind my ribs. I look at that photo now and wonder what we were both thinking. Maybe she was saying goodbye, in her way. One last good weekend before the end. Or maybe, like me, she was hoping something would shake loose, that some piece of the old magic would show up and save us. But it didn't. And we didn't. We just came home and stayed broken. The night she didn't lock the door, I always heard the door click. That was part of our nightly ritual. Even when the rest started to fade, Elise would brush her teeth. I'd check the thermostat, and just before climbing into bed, she'd lock the door. Click. Sometimes double check it. 2 sharp sounds. Safety and routine. But that night, it stayed quiet. I remember lying in bed, eyes open, waiting to hear it. I even counted the seconds waiting for the hinge groan, the familiar squeak of the deadbolt sliding home. Nothing. At first I thought maybe she'd already done it. Maybe I missed it. But when I came downstairs the next morning, the house still holding its breath in the early light, I noticed the door was ajar. Just an inch. Just enough to say someone didn't care if it was open. I stood there barefoot, hand resting on the frame, staring at that gap. And something about it more than any note, more than any missing suitcase told me she was gone. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. She didn't slam it behind her. Didn't even bother to shut it. Just left it open. Like a question. Like maybe she wanted to be followed. Or maybe she was daring me to care enough to notice. We used to have this joke between us that she was the paranoid one. Always locking the windows. Checking the garage door twice. I used to tease her. Call her the home security queen. And now here I was, standing in an unlocked house, and all I could think was, she knew what she was doing. I checked her closet that morning. Not all her stuff was gone. Some of her clothes were still there. The shampoo she liked still in the shower. But the framed photo from her nightstand missing. The green duffel bag from the attic gone. She left in pieces, like she didn't want to cause a scene. Just wanted to become gradually absent. So I couldn't quite pin down the moment it all fell apart. That night, I sat in her chair by the window. She always sat there with her tea lemon and honey wrapped in that worn gray cardigan that still smelled like her when the light hit it just right. I held the cardigan that night, not dramatically, not like in those movies where someone clutches it to their chest and sobs. I just held it in my lap. My hands didn't know what else to do. And I sat there for hours, listening to the creaks in the ceiling, the occasional gust against the shutters, the coffee maker resetting with a sigh. I didn't call her, didn't text. Something in me still thought, give her time, give her space, she'll come back. But some deeper part, the one I'd been ignoring, knew. She wasn't coming back through that door. The weeks that followed were fog. I moved like someone underwater, did the dishes, answered emails, walked the dog, but I didn't sleep much. I didn't really eat. I kept checking the door every night, not locking it, just checking, just staring at it, like maybe it would open on its own, and she'd be there, suitcase in hand, eyes tired but kind. It never did. People say when someone leaves you, you remember everything they touched, and it's true, but you also remember what they didn't touch, like that door, that quiet, swinging gap that didn't even merit a goodbye. I remember one night I was already in bed, trying not to count the seconds again, when I heard something downstairs. Just a soft thud. Not loud, but enough to make my heart race. I got up, grabbed the old baseball bat from the hall closet, walked through the house barefoot, in the dark, like some overcautious sitcom dad. Turns out, it was just the wind. Blown open the door again. That was the first night I locked it myself. Click. It felt heavy. Final, like closing a chapter you didn't want to end. But the pages had already turned. I think I cried that night. Not all at once. Not loud. Just a leak behind the eyes that wouldn't stop. I sat back on the couch, bat still in hand, and whispered something like, "You should have slammed it. Because then, at least I could have been angry. Then, at least I could have blamed her for making it hurt. But she didn't slam it. She left it open. And that's the part I can't forget. That somewhere deep inside her, at least still hoped I might follow. And I didn't. I didn't even notice until it was too late. The dinner I cooked anyway. A week after the door, after the silence set in like dust, I made lemon pasta, her favorite. Not mine, I always thought it was a bit too tangy, but hers. She used to joke that lemon pasta was her reset button. When life felt off, that's what she'd make. Simple, bright, a little indulgent. She said it tasted like spring, even in February. So I cooked it. Boiled the linguine just past al dente, because she liked it softer than the box said. Zested the lemon before squeezing. Added the cream, the parmesan, the cracked pepper. Stirred it slowly, like I remembered watching her do. It smelled like her. The kitchen. The lemon oil in the air, the warmth from the stove, the faint scent of that fancy sea salt she always insisted made a difference. I plated 2 servings, without thinking. Just muscle memory. Set them down at the table. Hers on the left, mine on the right, like always. And then I sat. Just sat. I stared at the plate in front of her chair for a long time. Steam curling up in lazy ribbons, the edges of the cheese starting to firm. And I thought about all the times I'd seen her twirl that first forkful like it was a little ritual. Like if she got that first bite just right, the whole meal would fall into place. I waited, like an idiot, like she might walk in late, muttering an apology, and sit down across from me like none of it ever happened. And when she didn't, I ate hers, too. Not out of hunger. God, no. I wasn't eating much back then, but I couldn't stand seeing it sit there, untouched. It felt rude, wasteful, wrong. So I picked up her fork and ate from her plate, and I cried into a bowl of pasta. Not the dramatic sobbing kind, just quiet tears. The kind that fall without warning. The kind that embarrass you, even when you're alone. You ever cry while chewing? It's not elegant. I remember thinking she'd be horrified. You're getting tears in the sauce. She would have said, and I would have said, it's a secret ingredient. And she would have smiled, because that's the kind of stupid thing I always said. But the chair stayed empty, and my joke just echoed back at me. Afterward, I washed the plates, even hers, scrubbed them extra hard, like that might scrub the guilt off. 2. The sponge smelled like lemons and regret. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling again, thinking about how small things like dinner turn sacred when they're gone. We used to have themed nights. You know, meatless Mondays, Taco Tuesdays, even Weird Food Wednesdays, which was just an excuse to make something neither of us could pronounce. And somewhere along the way, we stopped doing that. I don't know why. Work got busy. Schedules didn't line up. Or maybe we just stopped caring enough to make dinner fun. That's the thing. They don't tell you about relationships. Most of them don't die in flames. They die in microwaves, in skipped meals. And I'll eat later. And you already ate, and let's just order something. I thought about all the dinners I ate in front of the TV. All the times she sat at the table alone while I finished emails. All the empty chairs we pretended weren't empty. And I realized that lemon pasta might have been the first real dinner I'd cooked in months. It wasn't about the food. It was about the effort, the showing up. And I hadn't shown up for a long time. Not really. A few days later, I opened the spice cabinet and found a sticky note tucked between the basil and the oregano. Don't forget the lemon zest. It said, her handwriting. I stood there holding it like a message from another world, like a breadcrumb from the past. I couldn't remember when she'd written it. Maybe it was from a grocery run weeks ago. Maybe she stuck it there knowing I'd find it. Or maybe it had always been there, and I just never noticed. I left it. It's still there, folded a little at the edge now, stained with turmeric. But it stays, because it reminds me that love was in the details, in the lemon zest, in the dinner you cook anyway, even when you're the only one left to eat it. When the dog stopped waiting at the door, his name was Murphy, 25 pounds of fuzzy, confused loyalty with floppy ears and a tail that wagged like a metronome whenever Elise came home. Rescue mutt, some kind of terrier schnauzer mix, though Elise always insisted he had a bit of fox in him. Look at that face, she'd say. He's plotting something. He used to wait at the front door every evening around 5:30, like clockwork. As soon as he heard her car or the garage door creak open, he'd rush to the doormat, paws tapping the tile in a little nervous dance, ears perked, body quivering with anticipation. And when she walked in, still wearing her teaching hoodie and carrying that giant water bottle, he'd spin in excited circles like he hadn't seen her in years. I used to roll my eyes. He loves you more than me. She'd scratch behind his ears and say, well, at least he listens. The week after she left, he still waited. Every night, same routine. 5:30, then 5:40, then 6. He'd pace back and forth, whine once or twice, and then sit. Just sit there, staring at the door like it owed him an explanation. It broke something in me. One night, I think it was raining, I found him curled on the mat, head resting on his paws, eyes open, waiting, hoping, and I sat beside him, right there on the floor. We didn't move for a long time. I don't think she's coming back. Bud, I whispered. He flicked one ear but didn't look at me. Dogs know, long before we do. They're tuned into things we ignore. Tone, routine, tension. And Murphy, he started to change. After about 10 days, he stopped waiting at the door, stopped running to check every car passing by, stopped sniffing her side of the bed. Instead, he began following me everywhere, like I was the last scrap of normal he had left. Into the kitchen, into the bathroom, even just pacing the hall behind me like a fuzzy little shadow. And at night, when I'd sit in her chair or linger by the fridge, he'd nudge me. Just a paw, a small sound, like he was saying, "Let it go. Come sit. Let's breathe." He started sleeping on her pillow. That one hurt more than I'd like to admit. The first night he did it, I wanted to move him, scold him, maybe. It felt disrespectful, like a trespass. But then he curled up, nose tucked under, and let out the softest sigh. A perfect, grieving little spiral of fur. I left him there. I think animals do grief differently. They don't analyze it. They don't ask why. They just feel it, fully and honestly, until it softens. I envied him for that. I remember Elise saying once, "Murphy's the soul of this house." I didn't get it at the time. Thought it was one of her woo-woo phrases. But after she left, yeah, he was the one who noticed first, the one who looked for her, mourned her, and eventually accepted her absence. Meanwhile, I kept waiting. Not at the door, exactly, but in the pauses between thoughts, in the second cup of coffee, in the email drafts I never sent. Murphy adjusted. He became quieter, slower. He'd sit beside me on the couch while I watched shows we used to watch together. Shows she picked. Shows I never really liked, but suddenly couldn't turn off. Sometimes he'd look at the door, just briefly, when a car pulled in across the street. But then he'd blink, curl tighter, and fall asleep again. And one night, I remember this so clearly, I was taking him out before bed, and we stopped on the porch. The moon was sharp, the air crisp, and he just stood there for a moment, not sniffing or pulling at the leash, just still. And then he looked up at me. It was one of those long looks, the kind that's hard to explain unless you've had a dog who really knows you. And I swear, in that moment, I felt him say, "It's just us now." Stop looking for the echo. That night, I finally cleared her side of the bathroom counter, put her hair ties in a drawer, tossed the half-empty moisturizer, folded the towel she left hanging crooked on the rack for months. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was motion. And Murphy, he slept at my feet that night. Not on the pillow, not by the door, right next to me, like he finally believed I wasn't going anywhere. The coffee still brews for two. It's been months now, maybe longer. I don't really keep track anymore. The days roll into each other like warm laundry folded, repeated, familiar, and still, every morning. The coffee maker brews 2 cups. I wish I could tell you it's symbolic, or poetic, or maybe even pathetic in some noble way. But honestly, it's just habit. I said it that way once, and I never changed it back. Elise used to call me a creature of rhythm, not routine rhythm. "You don't like structure," she said once, "but you like patterns." I didn't understand the difference then. Now I do. Patterns are quiet, invisible until they break. And the second cup of coffee, it's my last pattern that still feels whole. Some mornings, I pour both mugs, one for me, one for her. I put hers across the table. I don't talk to it or anything. I'm not that far gone. But I look at it. I let it sit. Steam curls upward from both. And for a few minutes, I feel like I'm not drinking alone. Then I drink hers, too. Still piping hot, still too strong. Other mornings, I just let the second cup sit in the pot. It turns bitter by mid-morning. The smell thickens in the air, clings to the walls. I used to think that meant I was losing my mind. Now I think it means I'm still here, still in this house, still trying. I had a friend over last week, first time in a long time. He's from my old firm. We sat in the kitchen, and I poured us coffee. 2 cups. No ceremony. He glanced at the machine and said, "Still brewing double?" I nodded. He didn't ask why, just sipped and looked out the window. And I was grateful for that, for the silence that didn't need explaining. I think grief changes shape the longer you live with it. At first, it's sharp, angry, loud, then it softens into something else. Something slow, not sadness, not exactly. More like acknowledgement. The kind of ache you stop fighting and start folding into your morning. Some days, I forget she's gone. I'll hear a noise upstairs and think, "Oh, Elise must be." And then I remember. Not with a jolt. Not anymore. Just with a quiet understanding, like the second cup of coffee sitting untouched. I tried dating once, briefly. A woman from the dog park, believe it or not. She liked crossword puzzles and red wine and had a nervous laugh that made me smile. But after 2 dates, I found myself talking about Elise more than myself. Not bitterly, just naturally. She was in every corner of my sentences, and I could see it in this woman's eyes. She wasn't jealous. She wasn't even annoyed. She just saw the shape of someone who wasn't there and realized she didn't want to sit in her seat. I didn't blame her. After that, I stopped trying to replace Elise, stopped trying to outrun the echo. Instead, I started letting her exist where she already lived, in the fridge note, the cardigan still hanging by the coat rack, the lemon pasta recipe tucked in the drawer, and, of course, the coffee. I don't think she'll come back. That's not what this is. This isn't hope. It's memory. It's love, boiled down to habit, to heat, to aroma, to the gentle hiss of a machine that still thinks 2 people live here. And maybe, in some way, that's true. Maybe she lives here in the way silence lives in an old church, not demanding attention, just being. There's peace in that, even if it comes late, even if it smells like burnt beans and missed chances. Tomorrow, I'll wake up at 6:04. The coffee will brew, 2 cups. One will sit untouched, warm for a while, then cold, and I'll drink mine slowly, like always. Like I told you back when I cried into the pasta bowl, love doesn't leave quickly. It lingers, in the clinks, in the clicks, in the cup you still pour, long after she's gone. I never changed the mug she left behind. It's chipped, near the handle, just below where her thumb used to rest when she lifted it. A small break in the glaze, like a crescent moon. You wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it, but I always notice. It's white, with little blue flowers. She bought it at one of those Sunday markets, the kind with handmade soaps and $20 carrots. I remember how she picked it up, turned it over in her hands, and said, "This feels like a morning kind of mug." I teased her for that. "You give mugs personalities now?" She just shrugged. "Some mugs are for mornings. Some are for soup. This one wants coffee and sunrise." And damned if she wasn't right. After she left, I didn't move it, didn't wash it, didn't put it in the cupboard or the donation box or that drawer we pretend isn't for broken things. It stayed on the rack by the sink, turned slightly sideways, like it was waiting to be used again. For weeks, I'd glance at it and think, tomorrow, I'll clean it tomorrow. Then weeks became months. And now I know I'm never going to clean it. Not because I can't, because I don't want to. It's the last thing she touched without leaving. Everything else, the keys, the closet, the charger on her nightstand, those were things she removed. This mug, it stayed. On purpose or by accident, I don't know, but it stayed. And now it's part of the house, like the creak in the third stair, like the mark on the wall where we tried to hang art and missed a stud. It's just there, quiet and chipped and loyal. Last winter, I made coffee in it. Once. It was a cold Sunday, and I was feeling brave or stupid, I don't remember which. I poured the coffee in, held it with both hands like she used to, and sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the backyard. And you know what? It tasted different. Not better, not worse, just different. Like the mug remembered her and didn't quite know what to make of me. I haven't used it since. Sometimes, when I have company, which is rare, I'll tuck it behind the other mugs. Like it's shy. Like it knows it doesn't belong to anyone but her. I could throw it out. God knows it's just ceramic. Just a thing. But here's the truth. It's the only object that feels honest. The coffee machine brews like she'll walk through the door. The photos in the hallway still smile like they're telling a lie. But that mug has a crack. A visible break. And it's still here. That's me, too. I don't think healing means moving on. I think sometimes it means knowing what to leave untouched. Not because you're stuck, but because you've accepted the shape of absence. I still talk to her sometimes. Not out loud, just in my head. When I see a movie trailer she would have loved. When I burn the rice, like always. When Murphy does that little sneeze snort she used to laugh at. I don't imagine she's coming back, but I don't imagine she's gone either. She's just around, in the rhythm, in the routines, in the cup with the crack I won't fix. Some mornings, I think about washing it, wrapping it in newspaper, packing it away, moving on. And then I make the coffee. 2 cups. Her mug stays dry, but it stays. And somehow, in that stillness, I stay, too. Wind down, the house is quiet now. The kind of quiet that doesn't demand anything. Just breathes with you. Slow, soft. Murphy's asleep at my feet. Paws twitching at a dream I'll never know. The second coffee cup sits in the sink. A trace ring of brown at the bottom. Already cooling. Outside. The porch light hums faintly. A moth taps against the glass. Sometimes. I wonder what Elise would say if she saw me like this. Not broken, not healed. Just here. Still waking up at 6:04. Still setting the table out of habit. Still remembering her in the small, ridiculous ways, like the drawer of loose batteries, the crooked photo on the stairwell, the socks she always mismatched on purpose. I'm not lonely the way I used to be. Not drowning, just floating. And maybe that's what love leaves behind when it goes. Not ruin, not bitterness, but the shape of something you once held, still warm in your hands. So if you're listening in the dark right now, wrapped in your own stories and almost sleep, know this: some things don't need fixing. Some mugs are supposed to stay cracked. Good night, sleep gently, and thank you for letting me tell you what I never really told anyone.